Frollo is the app that several thousand single parents say has been life-changing for them in the most profound way. If you're a single parent and want to connect with other single parents and open yourself up to an amazing support network and new experiences, then the Frollo app is the one for you. The Frollo app has two modes: community mode for meetups and holidays, guidance and support, chats, and discovery to make it easy to find like-minded local single parents near you. Dating mode is a mindful, safe, and respectful dating offering where everybody is there to date another single parent. All users on Frollo are verified, putting our user safety first always. The Frollo app is free to download and use, with the option to upgrade to premium for access to lots of additional premium features for an elevated experience, which makes it easier than ever to access the incredible connections and experiences you're looking for. To download Frollo, search for Frollo, Frollo, on the App or Google Play Store, or go to www.frollo.com for more info. We can't wait to see you on the app soon. Hi, I'm Zoe Desmond, the founder of Frollo, the award-winning app for single parents that features both community and dating modes. And I'm also co-author, along with my wonderful friend Rebecca Cox, that I made through Frollo, of the book How to Be a Happy Single Parent. This season of the Frollo podcast features a series of conversations that include wisdom and guidance from some of the wonderful experts and single parents that feature in our book. This week's guest is Aaron Dale, a co-parenting advocate who you will find on Instagram at raisingboys_2men. Aaron gives an open and honest account of his single parent journey and offers helpful and constructive co-parenting advice that we've included in our book, How to Be a Happy Single Parent.
First up, it would be wonderful if you could just tell us a little bit about your background, your situation, and how you came to be where you are.
Basically, going right back to the beginning, I was raised by just a single mum. And I actually grew up on the same estate as my dad and his other family. So my dad wasn't really in my life, but he was visibly in my life. And he came back into my life, left my life again when I was about 9, came back in when I was 16, very inconsistent. And I would say that I didn't really have a good example of manhood, fatherhood, anything like that. I got into a relationship with my eldest son's mum when I was about 20, 21. It wasn't the greatest relationship, but I don't think there was any longevity in it, but it was for the moment, I guess. But she fell pregnant. We felt that, I guess, we had to try and make it work. And we wasn't able to make it work. It was actually quite toxic. We separated quite early on. Literally, he was born, and within a few months, we were no longer together. I navigated that situation quite immaturely. I was still learning about myself, learning about manhood. And then I met my youngest mum about 2 years later. We were together for about 4 or 5 years. Again, she fell pregnant. None of these pregnancies were planned. She fell pregnant. And again, that didn't quite work out. And I guess when she fell pregnant, in my eyes, it was, even though we're not together, I now know what not to do. Because the first time was, I hold my hands up, I made a lot of mistakes. So it was like, okay, this is going to be a much better situation. And it's turned out to be. My youngest now has a stepdad. I think it's a beautiful thing. And I feel like 2 completely different relationships with each woman. And I co-parent very differently with both of them. But I would say that the children are happy in both situations. And that's the main thing.
How did that kind of personal evolution take place? And is there anything specific that you learned from the first situation that you were able to kind of carry through into the second?
Yeah, in terms of the first situation, it was more so about being child-focused rather than parent-focused. I think there was a part of me that felt like I almost had ownership, I guess, over my son's mum, because you've had my child. I should know everything about what you're doing. And obviously that's not the mentality to have. And that was not the mentality going into the second second child. In terms of that growth, I think it just came from, if I'm completely being honest, seeing kind of just the stress that it was just putting on my child's mum and myself, and seeing that it was just uncomfortable at moments. And I just thought, I just don't want this for my child. Plus, I started a new job. And within that job, there were some older men that kind of, I guess, I gravitated towards. They were in similar situations. But being able to speak to men about it helped me, I guess, see things a bit differently and be like, okay, you know what? I need to make a few changes. So I think having men hold me accountable really helped as well, which is one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about this as a man, trying to hold other men accountable for their actions.
Yeah, I think that's a massive one, isn't it? Because like you said, a lot of people grow up with a single mum. I grew up with a single mum, and it's like you often see that modeled, how to do that well, or what that looks like even. And I feel like for single dads, it's like a missing link at some points, isn't it? Of like, how do you become a good single dad? And obviously it's completely varies from how often you see your kids. There's lots more people doing 50-50 now, or doing increased co-parenting split. But it's like, there's not that many models out there of how to do it well. Is that something that you kind of struggled with at the beginning?
Yeah, and I think even hearing what you said there is so true. But I think when we think about single dads as well, it's not necessarily, I think, if I was to speak to a room full of men about being a single dad, they'd be like, you know, you need to be there for your child. You need to, I don't know, be consistent and all of these things, which is true. But there's also an element of being there for the mum that I don't think us as men really pay attention to. We think, you know what, our role is to, I guess, come in at times and be this super dad, like fun dads, put on your cape, do amazing things with the children, and then hand them back to the real world of your mum having to clean and not be so available. And it makes one parent look like the hero and the other look like the villain at times. And I think it's just understanding, for me anyway, that there needs to be a lot of support there for the mum. It's not just about taking the child, it's about ensuring that the environment which the child goes back to is okay, the mum's mental health is okay, the place that they live in is okay. And I think sometimes we just think, this is my role, that's your role, whatever happens, happens. And we just move on. And that's not really my mindset.
I think that's such an important point, you know, like this kind of, I guess, holistic view. It's not just, you know, I can be an amazing parent when the child is on my watch and that's my role. It's because, you know, even if the two parents are no longer in a relationship, which they're not because they're co-parenting, it's like the impact on the mental health of a parent of when co-parenting relationships or parallel parenting relationships or whatever, like, go awry. I mean, it's like that impact on mental health obviously is gonna, you know, that the child is gonna, you know, bear the brunt of that as well, to a certain degree. So from your experience, what are those, like, I guess, I don't know, your top tips for how to kind of keep that in mind, that, sort of taking into account the other parent as much as possible, even if it's a really difficult relationship or you don't, you know, things didn't end well or whatever is going on?
I always look at it from a perspective of every man anyway. Every man and woman, we all have a mum. And you always look at it like I do anyway. I would never want certain things to happen to my mum. And I saw my mum go through certain things. And even as a child, you don't quite understand. You just think, you know what, there's food on the table, there's clothes on my back, everything's okay. And then as you grow up, you realise, in order for that to happen, my mum had to work really hard because there was no support from that man. And I think sometimes you just have to remember your child, although sometimes we think, oh, they only want our time and they only want that clothes and they just want to have fun. Our child will grow to an adult with a lot of questions. And they're seeing everything. They might not be able to translate it and fully express it, but they're seeing how much stress the mum's under. certain things that the dad isn't seeing when he's not there. So I think communication is so important, but it's communicating without the ego, right? So by communicating without the ego, it's, I'm going to come and I'm going to ask, is there anything you need of me? Even if it gives you the opportunity to shout at me and tell me about myself and say, well, I know that I'm genuinely coming to the table. There's no expectations, but I genuinely want to see if there's anything I can do to help. And I think sometimes, rather than seeing, is there anything I can do to help, which is such a simple question, we just assume she's got it because she's fine, or you know what, he doesn't want to help out, so I'm not going to ask. And both of you could actually be screaming, the dad could be screaming, I want to do more, but I just want you to ask. And the mum could be like, I just wish you would ask if I needed any help, and no one's talking. So I think it's communicating without the ego is a major tip that I think would help a lot.
Yeah, it's like letting go of being right. It's such a massive game changer with co-parenting, isn't it? It's 100%. Like you don't actually need to be right.
You don't need to be right. And what is right? When you really think about it, everyone, I always say this, everyone was raised under a different version of normal, right? So you got two parents that come to the table. I was raised this way. This is normal to me. It might be toxic, but this is normal to me. The woman, different version of normal. You then come together and you're battling to see whose version of normal we should move forward with, rather than saying, let's create something. Let's actually say, you know what, certain things you went through, I don't want for my child. Certain things you went through, I don't want for my child. So let's create some, we have an opportunity here, a blank canvas, to create something better for our child than either of us had. But like you said, it's letting go of which way's right and being open to actually a new way.
Yeah, and sometimes just thinking in your head, I am right.
Yeah, keeping it to yourself.
Exactly. I wonder with your work that you do on Instagram, you know, like Zoe and I really love what you do and we engage with it. I just wondered if you have more communication on there with single mums or single dads, or if it's a mixture of both, and kind of how that, the advice that you would give to either, how that would split.
Single mum, like 78% of my page is women. I think men struggle with that. They hear certain things and they feel attacked straight away, and they feel, you know what, but women need to do this. And it's a lot of finger pointing. You do one video about what men could do better, men say, yeah, but women. You do one video about women will say, yeah, but men. It's, I always say, I try and make my content as neutral as possible, but depending on what you're going through, you're going to perceive it a certain way. You're going to feel maybe attacked, or you're going to feel supported. But it really depends on what you're going through. But a lot of men seem to struggle with the woman moving on. That seems to be one of the biggest things men come to me about, is having another man around their child and my child's mum moving on. And I always say, my child has a stepdad, but that doesn't change my role as his dad. And I think a lot of us worry sometimes that someone else coming in is going to mean that our role changes. And our role never changes. We just have to continue to do our role. And I think it's so important. Just because someone else is in the mum's life or someone else is in the dad's life, we still play our role the same way we would have before.
Is there any advice you would give to people who are struggling with that transition, and how keeping kind of, because there's two things to think about, isn't there? There's obviously how you feel about it, how your child feels about it, and then kind of navigating all of that with your co-parent, who obviously happens to be your ex as well. So there's another dynamic there. Is there like a main piece of advice for trying to ease those times?
I think the first thing I always say to people is, you're a parent first, you're not a co-parent, right? So I think when we hear the term co-parent, we automatically, just naturally, we start to think about the other parent and the dynamic with that person. Whereas our role is to parent, to raise this child from infancy to adulthood. Co-parent just means that me and the woman are no longer together. That's the only difference. My role hasn't changed. So it's just, to me, it's saying to the dad anyway, all that energy you have, all that frustration you have, all that worry that you have about what the woman's doing, take that energy and put it into your child. Just spend more time with your child. Do these amazing things with your child. you'll feel so much better because you're engaging with your child's engaging with you, and you'll realize this is what it's about. I think sometimes we get so worked up that we actually, without meaning to, we remove ourselves from the situation rather than saying, you know what can I do? What more can I do for my child? And I think that's the key. Being child focused, just remain focused on the child. Whatever's going on, I always use this analogy, right? You've got the mum's world, you've got the dad's world. And then in the middle, you've got the kid's world. And that's where you attach to each other. If the mum is meeting a man, going to work, going to the gym, that falls into her world. You have nothing to do with that. She has nothing to do if it comes onto your side. The only time you have something to do with each other is when it involves that child there. So again, just being focused on the child.
What are your thoughts, thinking about that analogy about the mom's world, the dad's world, and the kid's world, about if one parent refuses to communicate with the other parent, even if it's, significant information about the well-being of the child? Like, what are your thoughts on that? Because I know there's a lot of parents in the Frollo community who deal with those type of parenting relationships where it's just kind of siloed parenting. And I know there's a lot of worry about what the impact of that might be on the child.
100%. I think the first step is always make sure that you voice as early as possible in a co-parent relationship. I feel like there should be a kind of conversation as to, this is what I would like. These are the things I would like to be informed of. These are the things I don't really care about. And everyone's going to be different. Some people might want to know more. Some people might want to not really care as long as I get to see my child. Having a consistent routine in place, because we can't control how someone else acts. We can only ever control how we interact and react to what that person's doing. And I think sometimes we're trying to control, if they would just do this, if they would just do that, it would make life a lot more simple, but let's focus on us. So it's coming to the table early on to say, this is what I would like, ensuring you have a routine in place. So that way, even if you're not communicating, I'm seeing my child every other Saturday or every Saturday, whether we communicate, whether we don't communicate, that is when I'm seeing my child. For example, my child's mum, my eldest mum, she's very silent in terms of communication. And there's been times where things have happened at school and I felt like I should have been informed of that, but I wasn't. But just knowing I'm seeing my child at the weekend and I can speak to my child about it was enough to comfort me. And knowing, I think sometimes we make up in our head, oh my God, what if this happened? What if that happened? Nothing has happened. Your child's fine. You're seeing your child at the weekend. Focus on that. But if there's no routine in place, what's then happening? When can I see my child? I want to see my child. Can I do it this day? Can I do it that day? You're having to communicate a lot more, which then frustrates you a lot more. So as early on, let your expectations be known and have that routine solidified if possible.
Have you got any advice for conflict resolution? If there's something that if you're in a co-parenting situation and, whether there's a main carer or not, obviously if you've got kind of shared responsibility for the child and there's something fundamental that you disagree on, have you got any advice for how to kind of resolve those conflicts? Because often it can escalate into legal situations, which it's not changing anything. You're just paying to have those conversations.
That's a tough one because it depends on how each person is really. I think, again, I try my best when I'm speaking to people to not focus on what necessarily, if the other person would just do this, it's always saying, if there is conflict, make sure it's not involving the child. You're not speaking. We often get stubborn and tell your mum this or tell your dad that, and we're now speaking through the child. Let's not do that. Keep your child away from it. And again, this doesn't resolve conflict, but I think it reduces the chances of it. Not communicating as often. You don't need to communicate as often as you was when you was together. And I think people struggle with that. Wait a minute, I should be able to just call you at any time I want and have this conversation. Texting. My communication with my eldest mum is texting. We will text. I won't even bother calling because 9 times out of 10, she just won't answer. And it's not because she hates me, it's just because I know she's like that. And so our text. And asking yourself again, with conflict, is it because you feel you want to know or you need to know? Because a lot of us want to know something. We want to know this, we want to know that, and we get so worked up. But in reality, is it a need? Do you need to know that information, or would it just be nice to know? And sometimes just let go of that.
Sometimes it's also like, why do you want to know that? You have to do a bit of soul-searching of like, what am I holding on to here?
There you go.
One of the things I also wanted to ask you about is I've seen a few of your posts about child support and the financial elements of co-parenting. And I just wondered if you had any advice for people who are struggling with that side of things. I know traditionally it's often single mums that are applying for child support. And I mean, like Zoe and I both know lots of people who have struggled with working with the CMS and trying to actually resolve these issues. Is there anything that you've, through your work, kind of come across time and time again, or anything that might be helpful for people in that situation? And, you know, I love when you do your advice pieces for single dads as well. And I think sometimes I almost wish you could like make that into a pamphlet and distribute it to all the co-parents of the world.
I think with the CMS, one of the things I notice is a lot of mums feel like they refuse to go that path. There's almost like an embarrassment with it, or like I shouldn't have to. And I think it's just reminding mums that it's your entitlement. You're not begging for money. You're not chasing. It's your entitlement. And I always compare it to your job pay you, right? It's your entitlement. If your job did not pay you, I'm sure you'd go and complain about it, right? Because you've done that work and therefore you're entitled to be compensated for it. And I think as a single mum, you're doing so much work and you need that financial support. It's not the man. I think from a man's point of view, we've got to take our mind off. We're not paying for our child. So many people have that mindset. I'm paying for my child. You're not. You're paying to support the upbringing of your child. So from the woman's point of view, it's an entitlement. If you are unable to come to an agreement with the dad, go to the child maintenance service. Don't feel ashamed about it. It's an entitlement. From the man's point of view, don't use money as a weapon because it's one of the only cards we have. In reality, it's one of the only cards we have. And I said it in a few posts recently, just because you're able to dodge the system, because the CMS is flawed, there is ways around it. Money that isn't on system or cash in hand. But just because you're able to, that's not a victory for you, that's a defeat for your child. So it's being mindful in that. Or a victory for you over their mum might actually be a defeat for your child. One of the things men have a tendency to say, to caveat that, is, I'll just buy the child what they need, right? So my child needs trainers, I'll get the child trainers. I know I've got friends that have spent £150 on a pair of trainers for their child, right? Not being mindful that the mum actually needs gas and electric. That the mum, there's not actually that much food in the house. So you come along and you think, oh, look how good of a dad I am. My child's got £150 worth of trainers. Yeah, but that's a want. What they need, what that household needs, including your child, is to make sure the bills are being paid, to make sure there's food in the cupboards. And because you're unwilling to give money to the mum because you want to know where she's spending it, you're actually making that home life a lot more difficult. So that money you're giving isn't actually a benefit, it's a disadvantage. So I just think it's two parties understanding that the mum receiving money is an entitlement and a need. It's not a want. It's not something you should do if you're getting along. It's something that is an entitlement.
What would you, if you could like create like 3 golden rules for the perfect co-parenting dynamic? I know I'm completely putting you on the spot and you've probably given us the 3 already.
It's gonna sound so blasé, but make sure you're doing your part, right? So if both people are coming to the table knowing they're both doing their part, the dad's seeing the kids on a regular basis, the dad's being consistent, he's paying money, the mum's looking after the child, making sure the child has both of you are doing your part when it comes to the child. That's one battle won. No one can really complain now because our child is good. So it's both people not focusing on what the other person's doing, making sure you're doing your part. Staying out of each other's world. Staying out of her world, her staying out of your world. When you was together in that relationship, you was entitled to know about each other's world. And it's understanding that relationship's broken down. So those entitlements are no longer there. So staying out of each other's world, because that's where a lot of the drama comes in. Where was you? Where did you go? Who was that man? Who was that woman? That's no longer your concern. So staying out of each other's world. And this might be controversial, not feeling like you have to put on an act for the child. I think sometimes we need to do things together. We need to be a family. We need the child to... So you're almost creating this facade for the child, which then when another person comes into the mix, the mum moves on or the dad moves on, that whole dynamic has to break and it just creates so much more drama. So rather than trying to stop, I think sometimes we try and protect our children so much. We don't want them to go through any pain. We don't want them to see anything negative. We don't want them to go through trauma. That we can actually make things worse rather than saying, look, mummy and daddy aren't together. This is how it is, but we're going to walk you through this pain. We're going to be here to support you through this pain rather than we've got to stop our child from seeing this or whatever. It's not going to help. So I feel like there's something in there that I've hopefully given you, but I feel like those would be some things that I think people should focus on.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, but you need to make that into a guidebook too. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks. If you could actually just write the book for us, that would be helpful. The last thing I just wanted to ask was, I think as much as single mum, the term single mum can have a little bit of a negative connotation, the term single dad, if we're being honest, also has a lot of negative connotations linked to it. So I just wondered, from your experience of being a single dad, what joy does being a single dad bring to your life? And what does being a single dad mean to you, basically?
I feel like being a single dad, being a dad full stop, it's an opportunity. Like it's an opportunity to, I say you've planted a seed, right? And if under the right conditions, the sun, the water, that grows into something beautiful. And to feel like me, whether I was with their mum or not, I have an opportunity to plant that seed, to water that seed, to make sure that seed grows. It's such an opportunity. And something, it frustrates me because it's like looking back and thinking, why would my dad not view things that way? But to know that I've been given an opportunity that not every man has, not every woman has, make the most of it. I look at pictures of my children sometimes when they were like 5 and 2, and it's just gone so quick. And you think to yourself, why spend all of this time arguing like over things that are not even going to be relevant in a few years' time when you could just continue to water that seed? So yeah, to me, being a father, a single father, it's an opportunity. And just because you're not with the mother, your role hasn't changed. One more analogy, I look at it as a lot of us had to work from home during COVID, right? So the location where we was working changed. Our roles didn't change. I'm sure our jobs didn't say to us, you're now working from home, so therefore I expect something different from you. And that to me is co-parenting. You're no longer together, but what's expected of you, especially from the child, is still the same. So never think because you're no longer together, it's changed your role. It hasn't.
Yeah, it's just your working hours that have changed.
There you go.
And that's a wrap for this week. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. If you did, then I have one small favour to ask. Please can you take a minute to subscribe to the Frollo podcast and give us a rating and review. This really helps other single parents who might benefit from it find us. The Frollo app, which is fully user verified for user safety, is available on the Google Play Store and the App Store, and you can find out more info and download links at www.frollo.com or follow us on Instagram @FrolloApp.
My co-host on this series of the Frollo podcast and co-author of the book How to Be a Happy Single Parent, Rebecca Cox, is on Instagram at Single Mother Edit. And you can purchase your copy of our book, How to Be a Happy Single Parent, at all the major book retailers. Until next time, have a great week.